Y'all are the ones. You are the ones.
We are your literary relief in this COVID-19 time. We welcome you today. We have a fantastic reading. Tonight is fiction night, genre benders look up. We have Michael C. Keith, Maurice Carlos Ruffin, and Daniel A. Olivas tonight. So we have a great show for you tonight. And it is my pleasure now to introduce my co-host, Mark Vincennes, who is an Anglo-Swiss poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published 14 books of poetry, including more recently Becoming the Sound of Bees, Leaning into the Infinite, The Syndicate of Water and Light, and Here Comes the Night Dust. Vincennes' newest collection, The Little Book of Earthly Desires and a Novella Set in China, Three Towers of Tao, or How to Catch a Fortuitous Elephant, are both forthcoming in 2021 from Spuyten Duyvil. An album of music, ambience, and verse, Left-Hand Clapping, is also forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincennes is also a prolific translator and has translated from the German, Romanian, and French. He has published 10 books of translation, most recently, Unexpected Development by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz, White Pine 2018. This was a finalist for the 2016 Cliff Becker Book Prize in Translations. His poems have been published in many journals, including The Nation, Plowshares, Los Angeles Review, World Literature Today, Raritan, Asymptote, and Plume. His work has received fellowships and grants from the Swiss Arts Council, the Literary Colloquium Berlin, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Witter-Binner Foundation for Poetry. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, and where there are more coyotes than bears than people. But now it's my pleasure. Mark is going to read us a poem. Mark, please go ahead.
Thank you, Marissa. This is a new one. It's called Meeting of the Town Council. The official map of this town lies in a safe in old man Edison's office. He is a club of patrimonial tribes, knee-deep in martinis, stained walnut with brass fittings, and a powerful arc of history. Nightly nightcaps by the fire, a panel of reindeer antlers, the curled horns of wild rams, an entire menagerie of rabbits, groundhogs, and stuffed hares. Here's a bobcat pouncing midair. There's a miniature weasel snarling at the copper-coated wolf howling in situ. Up at the train station, caskets are stacked up, oblong pine boxes marked for transport, in the dark hold of a foreign ocean vessel dancing in the fog of the North Atlantic. And the town and her villages lurking back between two marshy banks where waterfowl scare up into the sunset and tall chimneys line the pathways with their promises of home. 100 eyes flare up behind the window panes at the wailing of a newborn or the bleating of the bullfrogs which abound in these parts. The ground quivers here, even under a blanket of snow, in the pine trees and the firs, in amongst the shrubs, in Aunt Madeleine's small garden, where curious gnomes wear silver wings, and the silhouette of some unknown creature crosses the train tracks in search of plastic containing the residue of yesterday's suppers. Down at the creek, the minnows whisper, "Let there be. Please, let there be light." Thank you, thank you. And now for our co-host, Larissa Schmeiler. Larissa's new novel is Slybang, out from Spite and Dibble. Her first novel is Patient Women from Blazebox. Her poetry collections are Medusa's Country, Mad Hat Press, Special Characters, Unlikely Books, In Paran, Blazebox, and the chapbook Cure for a Suicide from Chavena Bava Press, and the ebook Fib Sequence from Argotist eBooks. Her poetry albums are The No Net World and Exorcism, for which she won the New Century Best Spoken Word Album Award. Larissa's work has appeared in the anthologies Measure for Measure, Words for the Wedding from Penguin, Contemporary Russian Poetry from Dalkey Archives Press, and Choice Words, Writers on Abortion from Haymarket. Larissa is the original English language translator of the futurist opera Victory of the Sun by Alexei Khrushchev, performed at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Garage Museum of Moscow, the Brooklyn Academy of Music and Theaters and Universities worldwide. Larissa also edited the anthology 21st Century Russian Poetry from Big Bridge Press, and has been a translator for the Eugene A. Nida Institute for Biblical Scholarship of the American Bible Society. Welcome, Larissa. Let's hear some of your work.
Thank you so much. Since it's fiction night, I thought I'd read a page and a half from my novel Slybang, and I'm not going to give you any background. I'm not going to give you any background. Oh, I do want to say one thing though before I start. If you'd like to be on the open mic tonight, chat us up. Put a note on the chat, and we will put you on the open mic. Okay, good enough. So without any introduction, let's just dive in. We see Nora under the blanket. Her head is over the hole in the armrest. The transmitter suddenly activates and emits a series of beeps. Nora shuts her eyes. She is exhausted and at breaking point. Suddenly, a voice that is like Johnny Depp's comes through the transmitter. Johnny Depp, am I going too fast for you? Nora smiles. She likes Johnny Depp and the voice seems helpful. Johnny Depp repeats, am I going too fast for you? Nora hears this simultaneously with 4 other sentences, or the fragments of sentences. She hears quotes from Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer day? Nietzsche, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. The Beatles, all you need is love. The sounds emit in half syllables. After each, a barrage of semines takes its place. They are for the most part positive. She hears Stand By Me, the Ode to Joy, Soul Man, and the 1812 Overture, but only a few bars or words all at once. Nora breathes easily and relaxes. This strange medley seems to be restorative. She leans into the devices. Now a kaleidoscope of images and sound bites flood her in the synesthesia of short attention theater. She smells the seaweed of the Mediterranean and Lady Gaga's meat dress, but also her mother's voice and father's eyes. Her body shifts and twitches on the couch as though she is in rapid eye movement. The Johnny Depp voice wails and ululates and keeps asking, am I going too fast for you? The flood of semis becomes hyper-Sanskrit and staccato, chit, anan, and the sound of a carousel, and AC/DC singing Highway to Hell behind it. Nora is now in a series of movie clips. She's Columbia in the Rocky Horror Show at a black and white mass party given by Prince Uspensky. She is murdered by the in cold blood killers and immediately becomes Harper Lee's nursemaid in Capote as he ghoulishly awaits the killer's death. She is hugged by Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird, and next is on a plantation vomiting whatever root Scarlett O'Hara ate just before the intermission of Gone with the Wind. All this takes about 3 minutes. The psychic slideshow stops. Nora awakes refreshed and lifts the blanket from her face. She is smiling. She looks as though she's had a good night's sleep. A voice comes over the transmitter. It is Michael, a serial killer. Thank you very much. It is now my great pleasure to introduce my wonderful co-host, Jonathan Penton, who's going to be moderating our feature portion of the show tonight. In 1998, Jonathan Penton founded UnlikelyStories.org, which has been running as a continuously updated web magazine ever since. Unlikely Stories spawned a daughter company, Unlikely Books, which publishes 3 to 5 poetry books per year. Jonathan has led editorial and management assistance to a number of literary and artistic ventures, such as the New Orleans Poetry Festival, Mad Hat, and Big Bridge. He has organized literary performances in places like Alabama, Arkansas, California, Chihuahua, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Louisiana, Massachusetts, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, and Washington State and D.C. His poetry books are Last Chat, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, Prosthetic Gods, Standards of Sedity, and the free eChat backstories, which you can download from Arcturus eBooks. Jonathan, take it away.
Thank you, Larissa. So, I'm not terribly prolific, as people who frequent this room know well, but I do run, as she said, unlikelystories.org, and I'd like to read you a poem that we published this week at Unlikely Stories. This is called Drawn Under Locust, and it's by Kyle Trujillo. Thorns of stars, and we painted a fever on the ocean. The city is empty, fumbling worry and bewildered in this delirious weather. Our doves are hung with lice, as life is so often unlike itself. A crowd of abandoned cars, abandoned weeks litter this drowsy mind. Amuck in the supermarket, uncertain and circumstantial as anything. Those above separated the moon into crumbs to obscure us drowning. Everybody else in the world asleep in their vehicle, disappearing faster than sound. I'm exhausted, wearing through uncomfortable skins, etching death poems on the television. Invisible meteors will pass through our wings, then moth-eat tomorrow, perhaps, disintegrate reality. I know unconsciousness spilled into your morning. Seizures sipping milk, so disorientation implies some kind of existence. As I love you, also the ocean, it gnashed apart the shore to escape, aware of the resting pollution who caged us to desperate lives. Invasive crawling bugs across the kitchen ceiling, eating light bulbs to the socket and candle wax and wicks while night falls in, more devouring. Bury us in plastic jars until the chemical burns will molt from our voice, the pebbles of loneliness we swallow digest, then return these afterthoughts to the stagnant crossfire. I see mirrors in the windows, the frozen world so suddenly excised from comfort and banished. All right, again, that's Kyle Trujillo, and you can find that up on Unlikely Stories now. He's a wonderful poet. Okay, on to our feature. Let's start with Michael C. Keith, whom I'm meeting for the first time. Unmute, I have to unmute you now. All righty. Michael C. Keith's most recent books are Stories in the Key of Me and Insomnia 11. In addition to 14 other stories collection, including Let Us Now Speak of Extinction from Mad Hat Press, he is the author of an acclaimed memoir, The Next Better Place, and 24 titles on media subjects, one selected by President Clinton for the official summer reading list. Well, Michael, what was the title selected by President Clinton?
Could you repeat that, Jonathan? Could you repeat that?
Sure, what was the title selected by President Clinton?
Oh, that was Waves of Rancor, how the extreme right manipulates the airwaves.
Excellent. Michael retired emeritus from Boston College in 2017. Prior to his academic career, he served in several positions at radio stations across the country. He has been honored for his contributions to the field of media studies and his work in literature. Michael, what are you reading tonight?
I'm going to read a few things from Insomnia 11 from Mad Hat Press, and a couple other pieces from various other collections of short stories. I'd like to thank you and Mark and Larissa for having me here. Over the weeks that I've been watching this, I've been so impressed with the caliber of readers that have appeared here. And I fervently hope when this whole Corona thing settles down that this will continue on. Seems like a worthy a program to continue into the era when we're no longer quarantined. That would be good. So, shall I go ahead?
Great.
All right. This is called Girl Falls into Canyon. Gloria was going to come back and devote herself to painting the Horseshoe Bend overlook when she grew up and became an artist. There was no one she admired more than Georgia O'Keeffe, and she dreamed of doing for Arizona what her idol had done for New Mexico. In 3 years, she'd be going to art school, and then she'd move to the Glen Canyon National Recreational Area and start her life's work. She had it all figured out, and it excited her beyond words. Her parents brought her to the site as often as they could and cherished her sketches of the wilderness, recognizing in her a true talent for capturing the raw beauty of the desert gorge. After their daughter accidentally fell from the crest of the 700-foot peak, they could no longer abide the sight of her drawings, cursing the first time they decided to take her to the park rather than Disney World. This is called A Sick Friend Had a Request. I don't like the word dead. Too many grim connotations. People who knew you before you died now think of you in terms of decayed, rotted, decomposed, and even evil. Blame all those horror movies, I suppose. So if you would, please think of me as past, a gentler, less disparaging reference. Yes, I don't want to be dead. I want to be past. This is called Events at the Beginning of His Day. Faint light slips through the lace curtains. It's time for him to rise and let the dog out. His back is aching. It always aches when he climbs from bed. The house is dark and quiet, still as a crypt, as they say. The dog follows him to the kitchen, stretches and yawns, waits for its breakfast. Coffee first for him. Through the window over the sink, he sees a small dark object in the grass. Something dead, he figures, and he puts the Folgers can down. Better check it out before letting the dog out. If it's a dead animal, he'll eat it. As he approaches the small mass, it emits a deafening squeal and shoots skyward, its fiery contrail taking him with it. Looking back at his retreating world, he thinks, good riddance. This is called Bad Chemistry. My friend was planning to give away her Chemcraft atomic energy chemistry set. She said she didn't want it anymore, but I wanted it really bad and tried to convince her that I was the best kid to give it to. Unfortunately, she had the idea that giving it to Goodwill was the better thing to do, a more legitimate act of charity, she said. She said she thought it didn't count as a good deed if she gave it to me. So I was out of luck and deeply disappointed, as it was something my family couldn't afford to buy me. When I realized it was a waste of time to plead for it any further, I said I wouldn't be her friend anymore. In fact, I told her if she changed her mind and did give it to me, I would blow her house up with it. This is called Respecting a Parent's Wishes. Their mother always said that when she died, they should just wrap her body in a garbage bag and drop her in a local dumpster. So they did. They took her corpse to a location with a bright green waste bin because it was her favorite color. There they said a brief farewell prayer and lifted her over the sides of the container. It was the loud thud of the body hitting its bottom that drove home their loss. Until then, she was just Mom. This is called a harsh realization. For several days, we've smelled bacon wafting through our porch jalousies. It makes us hungry and at the same time curious about who's cooking so much bacon without inviting us in to share it. We thought we were close with our neighbors. This is called Breakthrough Advances in AI. In almost everyone's estimation, the robots of Methuen were superior to those produced in Silicon Valley. They could perform tasks that made the Silborgs, as they were called, or silly Borgs by their detractors, appear old school. The feature that most appealed to disciples of the Methuen automatons was their capacity to discern irony. Indeed, they could snicker when presented with sarcasm. This is called Why They Moved Away. At the center of the dried creek bed stood the towering remains of a Utah juniper. It looked like the arm and hand of a skeleton. Regardless of the time of day, the shadow it cast remained fixed on the farmhouse and barn that had once been the homestead of the Redding family. It was only when the wind blew hard and caused the fingers of the ghostly silhouette to tremble that one could discern a slight moan. How am I doing for time here?
Oh, you've got plenty.
I've got plenty. Okay. Excuse me. This is called The Third Time's Not Always a Charm. They were horrified the first time they found a dog they thought was theirs dead on the front porch. And then their dog appeared behind them and they were relieved. They panicked the second time they found a dog they thought was theirs dead on the front porch. And then their dog showed up behind them again and they breathed a sigh of relief. They automatically turned around expecting to see their dog the third time they found a dog they thought was theirs dead on the front porch. But this time the dead dog they found on the front porch was theirs. This is called A Terrible Time to Gain Awareness. He's reading to the audience from his new story collection. Halfway through one of the longer pieces, he realizes it's total shit and he panics. In desperation, he screams, "Look," pointing in the direction of the bookstore entrance. When everyone turns away, he seeks a hiding place in the nonfiction section. And I'll read this one, the final one here. It's called Insomnia 10. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. It was the bedtime prayer she'd been taught before she was old enough to read, and it had haunted her after she came to understand what it meant, that dying in one's sleep was a very real possibility. Whenever the benediction entered her mind as she was about to turn in, she feared shutting her eyes and cursed her mother's good intentions. That's it.
Wonderful, Michael. Thank you so much. It's good to have you here today.
Good to be here.
All right. I've been reading Daniel A. Olivas for several years now, and I'm meeting him in person for the first time tonight. So glad to meet you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for having me, and wonderful listening to his poetry and fiction. And I have to tell you, Michael Keith's titles do heavy lifting. They're wonderful titles that set up fantastic irony and other great things. Jonathan, shall I let people know about myself before I start reading?
I have the bio you sent to me.
Oh, why don't you do that? Okay.
All right. Daniel A. Olivas is an award-winning author of 9 books of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, including The King of Lighting Fixtures, Stories, Crossing the Border, Collected Poems, and Things We Do Not Talk About, exploring Latino and Latino literature through essays and interviews. Olivas has written for many publications, including the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, and El Paso Times. His first full-length play, Waiting for Gardenias, was selected for the Playwrights Summer Reading Series 2020. Olivas received his degree in English literature from Stanford and law degree from UCLA. And that's it. That's all I know.
That's it. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. As a person whose grandparents came from Mexico and who grew up in LA, born in Los Angeles, I think the year after the Dodgers came here in 1959, I have found that much of my fiction and poetry tends to be somewhat political. Political maybe in the sense that the characters are almost all people who look a lot like me and who sound a lot like my family and my neighborhood that I grew up in. My most recent collection, The King of Lighting Fixtures, published by University of Arizona Press, I was completing that, reviewing the galleys in November of 2016 when that election occurred. And when Trump was elected, on the backs of my people, I would say, with a rather bigoted speech when he announced his candidacy, I felt that I needed to write one more story to add to my collection. And I did. I wrote a bit of flash fiction, and I sent it to my publisher and I said, I really need this piece to be in my collection, and they agreed. And that piece is called The Great Wall, and I will read it right now. The Great Wall. Rogelio stood in the long line that snaked from the detention center's barracks to the lookout point at the other end of the compound. He shifted from foot to foot, the heat making him perspire and feel lightheaded. He was a smart boy, one of the best students in Miss Becerra's 5th grade class, so he figured that even though the cool winter weather still made San Diego's evenings chilly enough to need a sweater, the lack of circulation combined with the body heat of thousands of children conspired to make the detention center's air heavy and almost suffocating. The guards strolled slowly up and down the lines in an attempt to keep some order, but the children had become so numb to seeing the green-clad, rifle-bearing men and women that the best the guards could hope for was an organized chaos as the two lines, one for boys, the other for girls, inched forward to the dual lookout points. Rogelio could see his older sister, Marisol, directly to his right in the girls' line. She comforted a younger girl who wept silently into Marisol's shoulder. Rogelio didn't like crying in front of his sister, but right then he wished Marisol had an arm around him, whispering, "Don't worry, it'll be okay. We'll see Mama and Papa soon." Above the din of the other children, Rogelio could make out the recurring audio loop of the president's voice blaring over the intercoms that dotted the ceiling like so many menacing dark stars. He could almost recite those words from memory. "I will build a great wall, and nobody builds walls better than me, believe me, and I'll build them very inexpensively. I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will make Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words." Rogelio had never seen the wall except online and on TV. He thought it was ugly, even though the president had decorated it with ornate gold paint that swirled in strange designs along the wall's top and bottom edges. Between the borders of gold paint were bas-relief scenes from the president's life, beginning from his childhood through school, beginning careers in business and television, running for president, the swearing in, and the president signing executive orders. The children who had already visited the lookout points, which were simply large rooms from the far wall made of bulletproof plexiglass, said that it would have been easier to set up computer screens to say goodbye to their parents. But instead, the president's executive order explicitly prohibited the expenditure of funds for such niceties, and instead ordered that the family's farewell would be soundless, without the aid of microphones, with children on one side of the plexiglass, the parents on the other. Once in the lookout points, one for boys, the other for girls, as decreed by the president, the children would wave to their parents, who would be allowed to wave back. After a humane period of 30 seconds, the children would be directed out to the lookout point and back to their barracks to pack up their meager belongings for a new life with a relative or adopted family. Since these children had been born in this country, they were citizens, but their parents had entered the United States without documents, most with the assistance of well-paid coyotes. So, after the silent goodbyes, the parents would be ushered into a large black bus that would whisk them off to one of the reinforced gates in the Great Wall and back to Mexico, even if they had come from a different Latin American country. Neat, clean, fast, and beautiful. As Rogelio inched closer to the boy's lookout point, his heart began to beat hard in his small chest. He willed himself not to cry, to be strong, to show his parents that he and his sister would be okay living with this aunt in Los Angeles who had become a United States citizen under President Reagan's 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act. The guard's loud "next" broke Rogelio's reverie. He walked into the lookout point and stepped up to the thick, cloudy plexiglass. Rogelio squinted. About 30 yards of open terrain separated the two detention centers and their respective lookout points. Where were his parents? Oh, there. He could discern his father, who was a hardy, large man, but who now looked so small. His father wiped his eyes with a crumpled white handkerchief and embraced Rogelio's mother with his right arm. Rogelio's sister must have already seen their parents, since she had been just a bit farther ahead in the girls' line. He wondered if Marisol had cried, but Rogelio promised himself that he would not. He waved to his parents as he forced a smile that looked more like a painted grimace. His parents waved back, also forcing smiles, but Rogelio could see that their faces were shiny with tears. Before the guard directed his parents toward the exit, Rogelio let out a sob, his chest shaking without control. He told himself, don't cry, don't cry. But now, Rogelio's tears fell freely from his eyes as a guard put a hand on the boy's shoulder and gently guided him away.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you. So obviously a dystopian short story, and being someone who knows people who are threatened by this, the immigration policies of this president, and watching people I know, friends, crying and weeping as his attacks on them on DACA and others are very, very real. I wrote that story, and then in 2018, with the family separation policy that was eventually imposed, my short story basically became reality without the actual wall being built, at least not the way I describe it. And so I wrote a piece for the New York Times called "Dystopia Is Here." It was published in summer of 2018, after the Times and other newspapers had documented rather clearly the separation of children from their parents, and working in an office that litigates many of these cases against the federal government. These are very real things and very real people. I find it very, very difficult to be a Chicano writer and not address these issues in my fiction, in my poetry, in my nonfiction, in my playwriting as well, because every day seems to be a battle and every day seems to get worse. And I apologize for getting political, but for some of us, every day is a political experience. I'm lucky enough to be able to be published and share my view of the world.
Thank you. Please don't apologize for getting political. It's necessary right now. It's necessary regardless, but especially right now.
I'm not certain if you'd like me to read anything else. I have a poem, and I have a another short story, which is not really political, but it certainly involves some of the things I like to do, in particular in the area of magical realism and playing with modernizing, in a sense, fairy tales. But I don't know how much time I have.
Oh, let's hear the story.
Okay, so let me pull it up here. One of the beauties of being on Zoom is instead of reading from a book, I can pull it up on the screen. So this short story was published by the Los Angeles Review of Books, which is a wonderful publication here in Los Angeles, created by Tom Lutz, and I've had the opportunity to publish many pieces with them. This piece is called Gig Economy. The young lawyer stands on the sidewalk outside the Ronald Reagan State Building on Spring Street. He hums, swings his briefcase from side to side, pleased with himself, waiting for his Uber to arrive and whisk him off to the Burbank airport. The Los Angeles afternoon sun makes his already damp dress shirt adhere to the soft contours of his torso. He's gained another 10 pounds in the last 2 months. The late nights at the large San Francisco firm, combined with takeout Chinese, Thai, and Mexican food, all taking a toll on his once lean body. But he is successful, getting top performance reviews from the partners, veiled promises of great things to come in his career. Few young associates would get the opportunity to argue an appellate case, as he just did, on an important contract dispute that could make great authority if the court sides with him and issues a favorable published opinion. Creating stare decisis, a decision that will be cited by the legal treatises taught in law schools, relied upon by other attorneys in their briefs. The Uber arrives and the young lawyer hops into the back seat of the odd-looking car. Not a wreck, merely a dark green, boxy, generic vehicle without a hint of personality. The driver turns to him, a woman old enough to be his grandmother, smiles and winks. The gig economy has opened up opportunities for everyone, he thinks, even for older folks on fixed incomes. He smiles back and fastens his seatbelt in time for the woman to screech away from the government building. The young lawyer snaps open his briefcase, a graduation gift from his father, a man who never finished high school but who worked several jobs to make certain his only child could go to college and then law school, something the man and his late wife never could have imagined when they surreptitiously crossed the border into the United States 28 years ago. A young, brave couple who wanted to make better life for themselves and their soon-to-be-born child in this land of opportunity. Such a shame the man's wife would not survive a brazen, selfish cancer that took her away before their son graduated from law school 3 years ago. As the young lawyer rifles through his briefcase, he notices the car has stopped. He looks up and sees brick walls on either side of him, an alley. The woman turns to him, winks, and holds up a finger as if to say, "One moment, please." She pops the trunk, hops out, and scurries to the back of the car. The young lawyer shrugs. He has plenty of time before his flight and resumes his rifling. After a few minutes, the young lawyer starts to perspire. The woman probably did not leave the air conditioning on as she searched for God knows what in her trunk. But wait, the young lawyer hears the car's vents going full blast, but it's hot air, not cold, pouring out. He sighs, snaps shut his briefcase, and reaches for the door handle. He pulls, but nothing happens. He tries again, and again nothing happens. He scooches over the unusually hard plastic seat to the other door and tries that one, but no success. The young lawyer looks for the door lock, but sees smooth plastic where a latch should be. It is getting unbearably hot. He loosens his tie just as the woman slams shut the trunk. The young lawyer's breathing becomes labored. He turns to search for the woman. She is behind the car, looking at the young lawyer, sharpening a glistening carving knife on a black rectangular stone. She licks her lips, smiles and winks. Just as the young lawyer begins to lose consciousness, his mind drifts back to his first day of kindergarten. His beautiful mother walks him up to the school's gate, his little sweaty hand in hers. She squats, her perfume fills the air with love and touches her anxious son's cheek. My love, she coos, I love you. Do well and be good. Make us proud. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so I'm done reading unless you want anything else.
All righty, let's hear from Maurice.
Okay.
Unmute. Maurice, it's good to see you again, even in this format such as it is.
We're doing our best.
We are. Maurice Carlos Ruffin is the author of We Cast a Shadow, which is just an amazing and very necessary book, which everyone should read. It was published by One World Random House. The novelist was a finalist for the PEN/Faulkner Award and a New York Times Editor's Choice. Maurice is the winner of several literary prizes, including the Iowa Review Award in Fiction and the William Faulkner William Wisdom Creative Writing Competition Award for Novel in Progress. His work has appeared in the Oxford American, Garden and Gun, and Kenyon Review. A New Orleans native, Maurice is a professor of creative writing at Louisiana State University and the 2020-2021 John and Renee Grisham Writer-in-Residence at Ole Miss. His next book, The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You, will be published by One World Random House in 2021. Do you have a month on that yet?
I start next month.
On the book being released.
Oh, that comes out next summer. It should be July.
Excellent. Thank you. What are you reading for us?
You know, I was debating really hard, and first I want to say thank you, Daniel and Michael, for those wonderful readings. It was great to hear what you brought to the room, and I was going back and forth between some untested work and between that and some unread work. So I'm going to read a section from my book, We Cast a Shadow, and it's in the latter half of the book, and I figured in this intimate venue, I could try to read something I've never read out loud before. So I'm going to jump around some, so just bear with me, but I'll just give you some quick background. My book, We Cast a Shadow, which is from Random House, is set 50 years in the future. The main character is an African-American lawyer in an unnamed southern city. And he lives in a time and place where racism has gotten worse in America. His wife is white, which is unusual for anybody to have a mixed race marriage in the future. And their son is a white passing mixed race boy. He has very light skin. Except he has a dark brown birthmark in his face that's been getting bigger the older he gets. And this is making his dad worry more and more about his future. And so the basic premise of the novel is that the dad is trying to find a way to pay for a procedure called demelanization in order to turn his son 100% white, at least visually. So in this scene, this is from chapters 30 and 31 in the book, which is pretty late in the book. This is the flashback that's at the sort of the core of what causes the main character to take his actions. So all you have to know about this part of the book is that his dad is called Sir. That's his nickname. And I'll fill you in along the way if there's other things I need to fill you in on. All right, so Sir had enjoyed an early morning walk. Nothing too extravagant. Down the front steps of our building, circle the building, back. I wasn't an early riser, and he, despite my request, never called on me at the time he awoke, before our neighbor's rooster crowed. But occasionally, through great force of will, I managed to rise from the depths of sleep, covered in clinging seaweed, and throw my shoes on to join him. That particular morning, I was woken up by Miss Wendy Wood's adopted son, D. Soyinka, much later to be known as Supercargo, who moved in with us following the killing of his mother. Specifically, D, younger and smaller than my 7-year-old self, once again rotated in bed next to me where we shared the covers until his feet were kicking me in the face. I shoved him off the bed. What a strange morning that was. It was cold outside, but my internal furnaces were lit by the Visions of Blackness Festival, a Tico tradition filled with arts, crafts, and music. It was a big deal during my parents' childhood, but it had been canceled in recent years due to permitting issues, which Sir called newspeak, for the city didn't want thousands of Black folks gathering in one place at one time. There was a crackle in the air that abraded my skin, the smell of lemon house cleaner from Sir's early morning efforts. The tub had cracked some time before, so I was responsible for washing my face and armpits in the sink and doing the same for D. Ow, quit it. D pounded my arm, but his little fist didn't hurt. He was protesting the amount of force I used around the corners of his eyes, but you had to get in there good, or he'd spend the day looking crusty, and Mama would hate that. Shut up, you cloud, I said. Mama was in the kitchen doing something to our grits, the smell of butter and salt overtaking the other house smells, the thoroughbreds of nourishment out-galloping the quarter horses of soaking pans and stale potpourri. I forgot to brush my teeth, so my mouth tasted of sweat and cotton from biting my pillow through the night. This food ain't done, y'all, she said. It sometimes seemed that everything Mama made was in a state of coming, but never arriving. Come on, D. We'll just starve for now. That's right. Mama stirred a small pot. Her face was fuller back then. Chipmunk cheeks that I didn't inherit. Y'all starve for 10 more minutes. What's all this whining that's happening? Sir asked. Tell me, little D. D was 5 years old. Big enough to talk, but he hadn't talked at all, ever, or at least not anymore. Sir was always trying to get him to speak up for himself. My recollection of what really happened, what I actually saw, that is and always has been unreliable. Maybe it's a defense mechanism, or perhaps it's just how my software operates. You could tell me that when we stepped outside, my father left standard reality. You could say that Sir, my father, became an animated boy. Mama became a bird. D, a cat, and me, a dull duck, following along a wooded path. You could say that we were followed, hunted from the threshold of our very door by a creature made entirely of yellowed eyeballs, tusks, and filthy fabric fragments. That'd be perfectly fine and metaphorically true enough, but I must think in terms of what I recall from this reality. That ripping cold breeze, the vibration of big commercial trucks skirting the outer limits of the Tico, our projects, our ghetto, for downtown. The hand-drawn Tico pride banners strung up high in the trees, on light poles and on fences. They weren't allowed to build stands or counters, so the festival was a rickety, bedraggled affair. Not the products, but the presentation. Women in head wraps, sewed earrings lovingly laid on hand-quilted blankets, which lay on the ground. Men in wide-shouldered suits offered vials of perfume from the inside of their jackets. A girl pulled a cooler full of foil-wrapped pies. Oh, what kind is this, baby? Mama asked. The pie looked like a tiny moon pinched between her fingernails. Pumpkin, the girl said. Oh, that's different, Mama said. The girl smacked her lips. My daddy say they ain't had no sweet potatoes at the food savage. Well, should we get in, little D, Sir asked. D smiled. Don't just smile, kid, I said. Use your words. Hush, you hurt his feelings, Sir said. Get two, D said. Mama gasped. Sir handed me a $20 bill, and I told the girl to give me change. Give me a second, the girl unfurled a small roll of ones, and then she ran, pulling her busted cooler behind her. Hey, I said. Let her go, Sir said. That's Magic Moses' daughter. I owe them some money anyway. And Dee pointed and began to cry. It was the city police. Sir scooped up D, and we got out of there. We were safe, or so I thought for a moment. Hold it right there. It was Officer Douglas, Officer Dred Douglas, an electric current along my soft, hairless forearms. I live here, Sir said. You know that. Leave us alone, you big ape, I said. Most of the people near us had already cleared out. Quiet, boy, Sir said. Don't forget what I told you. Respect, he said. And what had he told me? I would have been lost in that moment to condense it to a cohesive theory of the case. But it went something like this. You are an angel. Fate, in the guise of ordinary people, conspires to pull the wings from your body, to break your grasshopper limbs, to leave you crippled in loam, to maniacally adjust the shape of your skull, to bleed your life's blood onto concrete, to destroy you, destroy your future, to destroy your children's future. Other peoples could rely on our nation's fundamental fairness as a starting point for any hopes or dreams they might have. But you, black boy, were born weak, but breathing and tossed into an open grave. 3/4 of fate's work was done in our reaction to the world. In attempting to back away from hissing fauna, a rattler or a jaguar, we find ourselves stepping off a mountaintop and falling to the jagged rocks below. Never bow to anyone, Sir would say, but don't let fools bring you down. Respecting yourself means even respecting those who don't deserve it. Officer Douglas, Sir said, how can I help you, my man? I got a report of a stolen beach bike, and you're the focus of our investigation. A beach bike? I said. My dad didn't steal some stupid beach bike. Shut him up, or I'll shut him up, Douglas said. Hush. Sir squeezed my hand hard. The buildings of the Tico emitted a special kind of energy. I couldn't see whether we were being watched by our fellow Ticosians up in their apartments, but we were. A screen door slammed somewhere, the voices of others far away, perhaps as far as 3 or 4 buildings over, hummed. I squeezed Sir's hand back. As soon as I did, he let go. Obviously, there's a misunderstanding. You see, I don't ride bikes. I had this old track and field injury that absolutely, Negro, Douglas said, shut your stinking trap. Douglas's baton slapped against his palm, producing the sound of flesh on flesh like a big, happy kiss. I know you. I know you and your funny shoes and your funny way of talking. You think this is a conversation, but this is a soliloquy. You mean a monologue, I said. If it was a soliloquy, you'd be talking to yourself, Mr. Douglas. Douglas shoved the tip of his club against my throat. Mama yelled. I went to swat Douglas's club out of my face, but I didn't need to. Mama had already pushed her way in. And there is a point of order that I'm sure you're aware of, regardless of whether you're brown as mud or white as milk, that you've encountered, whether you're male or female. In physical confrontations, a woman can get away with a lot more than a man. You see, a guy who flinches while literally under the gun better be wearing a steel chest plate because he's going to take one to the heart. But the most extreme circumstances, a woman has some freedom of movement of her body. She can shout, she can dance, she can even attack sometimes without fear of reprisal. Well, this is what I thought, but of course, you know, I was totally wrong about that. I was a child. In the scrum, Douglas pushed Mama to the ground, and she fell awkwardly on her arm and screeched. Sir shoved Douglas, but Douglas didn't fall. He was like a reed in the water. Douglas stretched the baton to its maximum reach and pressed the tip tenderly against Sir's chin like he was reenacting that painting where God touched naked man. The baton flicked Sir's fedora from his head, and Sir's hat grazed my shoulder like a stricken sparrow on the way down. I, like Sir, was frozen just then in time, waiting for some music to tell me when I could move once more. What? Douglas said to Sir. You gonna cry now? Well, go ahead and cry for me. Sir kept his chin up. I held Dee's hand. He had the calmest head in the bunch. What's wrong with you? Mama grimaced, clutching her arm. This is how you act? Terrorizing your own people? You ain't none of mine, Douglas said. I'm just checking out suspicious activity. Y'all the ones can't fly right out here. A couple other cops showed up, one tall and white, the other tall and black, made their way over. Their name tags were the opposite of what one would expect. What's this all about, Dougs? White, the black cop asked. Sir knelt by Mama. He didn't say you could move. Black, the Caucasian officer, pulled out his gun. Don't, Mama said. I thought she was talking to the cop with the gun, but it was my father she was talking to just then. But Sir wasn't listening. All the coolness and restraint he had exercised throughout our lives had finally evaporated. His forehead was bright with sweat. All I saw in his eyes was a lust. He stood up and went for Douglas, and it was a dance. Someone knocked me down. I skinned the back of my hand. The other two cops stepped in and grabbed Sir's arm. Douglas brought his baton down on Sir's forehead, and I was amazed. I was amazed because I didn't know that beneath the skin I knew so well was a river of blood, a river that had been freed to flow down his forehead onto his light brown blazer. Douglas cursed, but he struck again and again. The other cops let go, and Sir slumped, a chunk of pink face flesh exposed, a dollop of red collected at his chin where it dangled. Tell me you're sorry, Douglas said, unless you want some more of it. Say it, Black said. I'm sorry, Sir said. Mama's arm was broken. We spent the afternoon at St. Moritz's hospital. The waiting room was crowded, and hours passed before she was seen by anyone. It took Aunt Cheryl's coming over from her job at the coordination room to threaten the intake nurse and cause some movement in her favor. We wouldn't find out for days whether Sir was alive. His apology echoed in the empty cell of my brain and had a reminder of the event, my brown hand scraped white before the blood came. And I'll stop there.
Maurice, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
So We Cast a Shadow is readily available. Your library probably has it. Your bookstore certainly does. And of course, it's available on the internet. Aha, yes, that's it. Yeah, thank you so much, Maurice, Daniel, and Michael. I'm about to turn it over to Larissa for the open mic. If you'd like to be in the open mic, please do say something in the chat room. I see we've got a couple of people who have.
Yeah, we have Francine and Mindy.
Excellent. Okay, and if anybody else would like to read in the open mic, get in there in the chat room. Larissa, are you reading on another Zoom tonight?
Hello, Jonathan. What's that, my friend?
Are you reading in another Zoom room tonight?
I am not.
Oh, okay, I had my dates wrong. I thought you were reading for Gloria sometimes.
Gloria got her dates wrong. We're reading Bill and I are reading August 26th. That we're not reading tonight. August 26th for Chivan and Barbara First. Thank you for mentioning it.
Very good, thank you.
All right, fabulous. Anyway, let's have another hand, please, for Maurice, Carlos, Ruffin, Daniel A. Olivas, and Michael C. Keith. Wonderful, fantastic reading. Buy their books. Before we go on to the open mic, I'd like to thank our technical director, Amanda Roberts, for keeping us safe and for providing our technical support and all the flashcards that you see, all the posts that you see from her. Thank you, Amanda, for your help. I'd like to tell you about upcoming readings next week. New York's Lower East Side is coming with Thad Rutkowski, Ron Combe, and Jeff Wright, so don't miss that. That's on July 25th. August 1st, we have C.A. Conrad, Anna Halberstadt, Bill Yarrow, and Tara Campbell, so definitely show up for that. All right, so we can start the open mic now. I'm delighted that Francine Witt is here, and can we unmute Francine, please, and hear from her now.
Thank you very much, Larissa. And it's great reading, by the way. I'm going to read a flash fiction. It's a summer story, so seems appropriate, I guess. It's called The Miller's Barbecue. It is the night of the Miller's Barbecue, end of August ritual. Everywhere, summer loves are shutting down, sheets being draped over hearts like they are vacation furniture. Mr. Miller, loan officer down at the bank, prods the burgers. They are nicely striped and ready to be turned. Mrs. Miller glides through the yard with the same swimmy elegance she uses in their pool. Blonde hair and midriff top, she fills the glasses with lemonade. Brett, the 19-year-old neighbor, stares at her thighs. She pretends not to see him, pretends there were no late cricket nights in the garage while her husband slept. While her husband dreamed about interest rates and garden tools and, oh yes, Margaret. Margaret, who is right now waiting by the grill for her second burger and ends each conversation she has with Mr. Miller the same way. When are you going to tell her? Brett rattles his empty ice cube glass towards Mrs. Miller, who is talking to Frank Brown. I am thirsty, Brett whispers, and when she doesn't answer, he jumps fully clothed into the pool, where everyone suddenly stops what they're doing to watch this love-heavy boy sink straight to the bottom. Everyone except Margaret, standing alone now by the grill, watching the burgers sizzle down to coal while Mr. Miller jumps in to save poor Brett. Brett, who flip-flops like a landed fish once he is back on the concrete. And just as Mrs. Miller starts to look at her hero husband with an interest she hasn't shown in years, Margaret whispers into the burger smoke air, you know, now would be a perfect time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francine. Yay. Yay. Thank you so much, Francine. Fantastic. Mindy Levikov, I know you, but I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Mindy,
you got it. No,
yeah.
You got it perfectly.
Mindy Levikov,
Yes.
as I say, I'm very pleased to introduce you, and please read for us.
Yep. Okay, so this is part of a short story called Pockets. I'm getting on the bus. I put the correct change into the fare machine, exact change. I had it. I'd counted it out the day before. Michael was busy in the coffee shop paying the bill, gathering his cigarettes, getting ready to leave. The bus is still on the corner. I'd waited to get on, holding off leaving my seat at the counter. When I thought it might leave in another minute, I jumped up, crossed the street, and rushed to get on. In another few moments, Mike ran outside to where the bus was. "Where are you going?" he yelled from outside. "Just to visit my parents," I called back. He looked angry. The doors were closing. I knew he wouldn't follow me onto the bus. There were too many people around for him to get on and then drag me off. He wouldn't want a conflict with the bus driver or any of the other riders. I froze. Long seconds in my seat waiting. We pulled away from the sidewalk. We drove down Rockaway Boulevard onto the next stop. Finally, safe for the moment. I tried to calm down. On the corner of Beach 116th Street was the local coffee shop. We went there for breakfast, cigarettes, coffee, even for change. Whatever. Lots of people did. It had been on that corner for years. Maybe it's still there. My friend Roberta worked behind the counter, always sweet, kind, dependable, a truly good person. And the bus stopped there regularly, right on that corner. That was the bus from Rockaway Park to Far Rockaway and on to Jamaica, a Queens bus. Another friend. I needed that bus. Mike and I had gotten together the summer before, but by that fall I'd had enough of Mike, and it seemed that he'd had enough too. Little by little, he'd become suspicious of me. He was jealous of everyone who called me, anyone I knew. He'd suddenly lose his temper and slap or punch me, or worse. But how to get out? His threats were frightening, and his physical attacks wilder and wilder. Often he behaved like he hated me, like he felt I was going to harm him. But he didn't want me to leave. In fact, he'd say I couldn't leave. He wouldn't let me. I knew I had to get away where he couldn't find me or stop me. But how? Sitting in that friendly, safe coffee shop, I made a plan.
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark?
Yes, Ron would like to favor us with one of his poems.
That's great. Ron, would you go ahead, please?
Ron Colm or Ron O'Brimner?
There we go, Ron
Oh,
Colm.
there we go.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I messed up. I'm gradually learning this Zoom thing. I'm trying.
Not good.
Wait, I had a little luck. This poem actually just got translated into German and came out in a magazine called Fürstuhl. It's called Death is a Soldier. What he really is a middle-aged guy wearing camo who reads a lot of books on military history and dreams what the world would be like if Hitler had won the war. He sits in a neighborhood bar, hunched over a white Russian, watching TV. Every time he looks at the screen, something happens. Tornado slap Tennessee, coronavirus erupts in China, Trump opens his mouth. He nods sagely and sips his drink as these disasters occur in real time. Even as he stares at his now empty glass and wonders whether he should order another, his mind Googles a list of the living, and each name he clicks on becomes a life extinguished. This is hard work, he thinks. Yes, I'll have one more. I earned it. Thank you very much. You guys are the best. You guys are the best. Wonderful reading.
Thank you so much, Ron. Really appreciate it.
And please come next week to hear Ron along with Thad Rutkowski and Jeff Wright. They will be featuring, the Lower East Side is coming to Lit Balm. Okay, to end, we have Mike Folds. Mike, would you unmute please, Mike, and let's close out with Mike. Mike, would you please honor us with a poem?
Okay, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm also struggling with this. This is relatively new poem. It's called Garden of My Mind. Here we are living in our own worlds, undisciplined as children are, playing in the gardens of our minds. Some will survive, some will not. All will discover what their mothers forgot, harbored in the hearts of climbing vines. On Saturday, my grandfather, dead for 100 years, came to the door to rescue me from what I did not know. I turned him away, saying, "Thank you, but some other time." He wagged the vestige of his finger at me, blew cigar smoke in my face, and disappeared. Memories are the angels, or is it angels are the memories of that which was? Either one, ethereal. This is the garden of my mind, where the angels play undisciplined as children are, and is real. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. All right, that brings us to the end of our show. Once again, let's have a hand for Maurice, Ruffin, Daniel A. Olivas, and Michael C. Keith, and all our great open micers. Give them a hand, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Any last words, Mark, Jonathan?
Just take care, folks. We've still got a long way to go. And thanks for all the literature and poetry and love.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all for your support of Lit Balm. We really appreciate your being here. Tell your friends. Black Lives Matter. Wear your masks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.